He's opened this can of whoop ass on himself, and it's got nothing to do with turning gold into crap or whatever else.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you can't beat Southampton, let's pack it in. If you're going to tell me what the consequence is, tell me what the resolution is. Facetious. If you turn around to a player and by that logic and say you got a big nose, that's silly. There's no point in that. That's just optics and playing to a gallery. If they didn't like me because of their perception of me, heathens shouting this stuff out.
Yes.
You get smacked.
I'm looking at news just into me here regarding Championship club Millwall.
Yep.
Millwall has been charged with misconduct in relation to crowd control following the FA Cup tie against Crystal Palace, the game in which Mateta, of course, received that head injury. It's alleged that during the 5th and 20th minutes that the football club failed to ensure its fans and anyone else purporting to be supporters conduct themselves in an orderly fashion and didn't use words to behave in an improper, offensive, abusive, indecent or insulting way with either express or implied reference to sexual orientation. Millwall has until Wednesday, April the 16th.
How
now it's a homophobic chant.
I know what it was.
On the day
directed at Ben Chilwell. I understand what they were.
Right.
But this was at Palace's ground. How were Millwall as a football club supposed to control their fans in an away ground?
Well, it's their fan base we're talking about
so
here.
What are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to do? I mean, I always find this. I know something has to be done.
But you can't have a go at Palace for the Millwall fans.
I'm not going to go either of them. Right. I'm saying if the accusation is at Millwall, failure to control your fans. Now tell me, explain to me in very simple terms, because I'm a relatively simple man in these equations, how Millwall Football Club could have controlled their fans in that instance.
So in this instance, is it wrong for the FA to come out and say, Millwall, you're in trouble for this?
Tell me, about, again, if you're going to tell me what the consequence is, tell me what the resolution is. Tell me what the remedy is. Millwall will have a membership pass to be able to identify people. They did it years ago when Theo Pafitas was the chairman after the events of the 2001 playoff semi-final against Birmingham.
Yeah.
So they've done lots of things. They work very hard. There's an element of people's fan bases that behave appallingly at times. You can't do much about it. So when you turn around and make these broad observations like failure to control your fans, what are you going to do? Amputate their tongues?
No, I know what you're saying, but what you're saying here is, how can Millwall control members of their travelling support on this day?
Because I don't know.
They were going to chant whatever they chanted, but it's been deemed as actionable as far as the FA are concerned.
I understand why they're doing it.
That they chanted that in the 5th and the 20th minute.
Okay, so tell me what you would do in this instance, right? Because if the FA set out a charter, right, you must have this, you must have these kinds of disciplines in place, you must have this kind of stewarding, you must have this kind of response, and you meet all the tick boxes, and yet still pockets of fans behave poorly and say things that are poorly. How can the club subsequently be accountable for that, besides the fact that these people support Millwall? What do you do? So you're finding people just because you can?
Well, on this occasion, it was homophobic, wasn't it? Homophobic chanting. What they can do is stand back and do nothing, the FA. Hang on, though. I'm now seeing, coming in from Millwall, Millwall, Simon, are saying the chant in question is condemned by Millwall. And once again, it strongly emphasises its zero tolerance policy against discrimination of all kinds. The club remains committed to working tirelessly to eradicate homophobic chanting, etc. This work will continue. The club is proud to work side by side with Millwall Community Trust to support and provide a safe, inclusive space for the LGBTQ plus community, particularly through its 2 LGBTQ plus teams, Millwall Romans and Millwall Pride. So Millwall are basically saying, we're doing as much as we can, right, which is what you're saying. But when it came to the actual match itself, on the 5th and the 20th minute, you're saying Millwall couldn't have done anything to control
because it's an offensive chant, right? And because it's a populist situation which football likes to alight upon, which is support of certain communities, why then aren't Manchester United going to be charged for the offensive, insulting observations that were made to Phil Foden about his mother? Because it's a different dynamic, isn't it? It has a different feel to it. So ultimately, because it's in vogue at this moment in time to patronise sport through a particular prism, and we want to wave rainbow flags at football matches that have no relevance to football, right? We're now going to sanction Millwall and not Manchester United. I suppose
there's a feeling probably within the FA, Simon, that if they went after every club whose fans indulged in certain chants or singing, they'd be throwing out fines and sanctions right, left and centre. Where does it stop? On this occasion, they have decided to act.
But again, the language, I'm very troubled by the language.
Yeah.
Because the language of the fans, initially, of course.
Yeah.
But then you move on to the FA and they say, failure to control your fans. So please, someone explain to me how you can control that, how you can stop it. You're just giving me a fine that I can do bugger all about, except fine fans, which I do, exclude fans, which I do, and then I'm a hostage to fortune, waiting for the next set of fans that might behave badly, knowing that at the end of the day, I'm going to get it in my pocket for something that I've desperately tried to avoid, taken very seriously. So
So what's a better way of dealing with this?
Well, I think if the FA are going to tell you why they're fining you, they should also be telling you the standards that you have to meet, which are reasonable. I'm saying that in order to be reasonable with people, you have to give them an opportunity to remedy things. If a football club is doing everything it possibly can, this is not Winston Smith, this is not Big Brother. You can't control the thoughts of people. You can't legislate for what a section of football fans might do, and even more so in an away ground. What do? You just get a fine.
So
that's what you get.
Who should get punished then in this situation?
Well, I think ultimately...
I'm not saying you come out swinging blindly, but who should be punished?
I think Millwall would be as disappointed with the behaviour of their fans and would want to make sure as best they can, without gagging football fans and without standing in front of them and policing everything that comes out of their mouths. I think Millwall, like most football clubs, do everything they can to produce an environment that doesn't enable people to behave at times in an unacceptable fashion. You're just consequencing a football club because you can. Because the optics are, well, it was a homophobic chant, we don't like this, football's an inclusive sport, so what we're going to do is we're going to smack the club who could do nothing about it, who can't stop it, who will do everything they can to exclude these people, do everything they can to police it. But like everything else, we had this ridiculous policy in this country of zero COVID. So people couldn't go out for 6 months because of you could sit in a pub, but you couldn't stand because of the nonsense that people put out there. And then you get judged by a full set of narratives. So my point is I don't think you should tolerate it. I think you should set the standards right. This is what you have to do. And if you don't meet those standards and your fans behave badly as a result of it, bang, you get smacked.
But you're directing your guns here at the FA.
I am.
For saying, we heard it, we're not happy about it, and you're in for it.
I'm directing it at the FA. I'm directing it at Millwall for their fans because their fans are behave poorly. But Millwall Football Club can't do anything about that.
No.
So what you get is Millwall Football Club saying, well, we're doing everything we can, we act it responsibly, we police our fans, we try to ensure we've got a membership system, we have a zero tolerance policy to any kind
they
of
can
abuse.
ban fans.
And I'm sure
they have done in the past. I remember that.
And I'm sure they continue to do that where they possibly can. But what you're asking for is an impossible circle to be squared.
Yeah.
You're asking for a zero tolerance policy. And if you don't get it, then you consequent people. My argument is not that they shouldn't have some ramifications for their behaviour of their fans.
Yeah.
But if they are set to a standard, if the football world wants to tell you you can't do something, right, then give me the guidelines of what you think is the reasonable approach for me to stop it. And if I meet those guidelines, what else can I do?
I think this is a good point. This is coming in. I'm looking at a message I'm getting here from a Millwall fan. There's no name in it. You might notice this morning the club condemns the chanting in the statement. But this is their first communication from the club regards the chanting. And they didn't condemn it previously. Why condemn it now and not immediately after the game? Now, that is a very fair point.
I'm not sure that's right. Because I remember this conversation coming up because it was more centred on Mateta, more centred on the fact that Millwall fans were saying, let him die, let him die. Like lots of fans shout at footballers because footballers have lied around on the floor for so long that when a serious injury comes along, people think they're crying wolf, right? I'm not excusing the chant. And I remember in that conversation, there was an observation about the homophobic chanting, and I do think that Millwall addressed it at the time. They might not have made a 4-act play out of it. I'm pretty sure they responded to it.
Right. So Millwall not for the first time in the dock here, and they're looking at some kind of punishment, whether that is a sanction, whether it's a fine or whatever. Do you think that Manchester United in the passing have got away with one here regards the chants about Phil Foden's mother?
Not really by the standards that I've set, because the governance is tragedy chanting. Tragedy and discriminatory chanting, not personal ad hominems. It's a personal. So basically, if you turn around to a player and by that logic and say, you've got a big nose, right, then ultimately they can take offence at it, and then that particular football club can be sanctioned.
But I know it's
appalling to call someone's mother the kind of things that Phil Foden's mother was called, right? And you have to sit there or stand there as a player and listen to these heathens shouting this stuff out. But the fact of the matter is, do we live in a situation where the football now is going to be so sanitised that anything that people are offended by is going to be taken off the table?
I've got to tell you, a high-profile individual in the game, I'm not going to name him, messaged me, who is at the Manchester Derby, saying, you want to hear what they're singing about Foden's mother. It is an absolute disgrace. So that goes unpunished, but this doesn't. There's another message from another Millwall fan. The club have handled it appallingly. There are many failings which were supposed to be in place after the Wigan game, and the FA put an action plan in place. The majority of actions were failed on this game.
Well, that then might negate some of my rent, because my observations are, and my experiences are, and I've been on the receiving end of it when the FA get their two penneth involved, is that they don't give you the solution mechanism, they just give you the smack. So you sit in front of them, you say to them, I've done everything within my power, tell me what else I could have done. Well, not much more, but here's a big fine for you.
If you can't achieve zero tolerance,
you can't.
You've got to be seen to get close to as near as damn it.
Yeah. But
you've got to aim for it.
But you've got to be realistic about what you can and can't achieve. There's no point, there's no point asking a one-legged man to run 100 metres in 9 seconds and then berating him because he doesn't achieve it. That's silly. There's no point in that. That's just optics and playing to a gallery. You've got to be able to put a framework in place that is realistically able to be achieved.
Will that framework
accept
work?
The margins.
Will that
accept
work?
The margins of error.
Will that change anything? Will that work? Millwall saying the club is proud to work side by side with the Millwall Community Trust to support and provide a safe, inclusive space, blah, 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 and on and on. Do these initiatives work?
Yes, of course they do. They make a difference. Of course they do.
Yeah, but some of the Millwall fans inside Crystal Palace Stadium that day didn't give a damn about that.
And they are the exceptions, not necessarily the rule. And we saw 25 years ago, the things that were chanted at David Beckham and Victoria back in the day were equally as offensive, probably not even, if more so, probably even more offensive than what was chanted about Phil Foden's mother. Yeah. And no one batted an eye. Circumstances have changed. The world has evolved. The tolerance of abuse has become lesser and lesser. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's about resilience. I have a mixed emotion about it. I don't think people should be running around and abusing people, but I do think sometimes in society people should hold their shoulders back and say, sure, you're irrelevant. You don't matter in my life, so your opinion is incidental.
As we do on this show, when there is breaking news, we'll go in that direction should it merit it, and this merits it. Millwall have been charged with misconduct in relation to some of the chanting in their game against Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park by a section of their travelling support. It was deemed as homophobic chanting, and the FA say that we can't have, and you're getting either sanctioned or fined for it. But in the FA's drive to achieve zero tolerance, what about the Manchester United fans chanting about Phil Foden's mother the other night? That seems to go unpunished. Millwall fans, not for the first time, find themselves in the dock, and a punishment isn't coming to them, it's coming to their club. We've heard a lot over recent times from Ange Postecoglou, Tottenham head coach. But if you poke the media, can you really expect not to be poked back? Now, the other night at the Emirates, in the game between Arsenal and Real Madrid, some Arsenal fans were looking at the Real Madrid players when they were 3-0 down, singing, "Are you Tottenham in disguise?" And that was put to Postecoglou in the build-up to this one.
Watched another team in North London last night, another quarter-final. They were singing at the end, "Are you Tottenham in disguise?" Is that a kind of mentality, whipping boys element you sort of want to lose here, or am I looking too much into it?
Oh, mate, I don't know. Probably looking too much into it, Michael. We're kind of trying to concentrate on what's important to us right now, and that is a big game tomorrow night.
So he dealt with that quite quickly. He was then irked by questions around Brennan Johnson's unhappiness at his penalty dispute with teammate Matthias Tell on Sunday against Southampton. Tell eventually took it and scored, but this was Ange on that.
We scored, we won, delighted. So it's incredible. It's the one bit that, literally turning gold into crap when it's Tottenham. Seriously, we're 2-1 up. If we're 2-1 up tomorrow night and we get a penalty in the last minute, I want the best penalty taker to take it. I mean, the one slight against this club is apparently that, it hasn't been a winner. Well, the winner's mentality in the last minute of a game is to score a goal. We scored a goal, and yet somehow in this alternate universe of where everything that Tottenham does is wrong, that's come out as a negative. Be it as it may, like I said, from my point of view, I was delighted because, like I said, if that's tomorrow night and we get a penalty in the last minute and we get a third goal, which could be really, really decisive, really pleased with the way the players handled it.
There's kind of no end to this, Simon, is there?
Well, it's his own fault.
If Ange pokes the media, he's going to get poked back.
Well, it's his own fault. I mean, he's got a persecution complex. I mean, I don't really read I think the first question is just facetious, and what I would say is something a-hole clever. You know, it's not necessary. That question is not necessary. It's not a necessary question, not a relevant question. It has nothing to do with the game. Nothing. He can't control what Arsenal fans sing and don't sing. So I think it's just a question to get a reaction. And you might think that's great. I don't. And I understand why there'd be an intolerance from Ange Postecoglou. The next question is a topical subject. You know, when people take penalties and our players argue on the field and there's controversy, you're going to get asked about it. And it's got nothing to do with turning gold into crap or whatever else.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you can't beat Southampton, let's pack it in, shall we?
Yeah.
That's Spanish gold. If you want to put it in
do you
gold.
think specifically members of the media are baiting Ange Postecoglou now and then, and he's biting?
Yeah, I think that he's intolerant of them, and I understand both sides of the argument. I understand that there are questions that the media have got to write subject matter, which is often regurgitative and repetitive, and they've got to give it a different feel. So they're going to do what they can. The only thing that Ange Postecoglou can control is his own reaction. So if you want to react to these guys and allow them to get in between your thinking, your logical responses, and an emotive reaction, and then create the divide, that's on you. You're paid a lot of money to be a football manager. A lot of it is also to deal with the media. Don't give it to them. Don't give it to them.
But you did when you were owner of Palace now and again.
A few times.
You bit back and then didn't like some of the coverage you got. This is the same thing with Ange.
No, I did the opposite. What I did was endured the coverage to such a point where I wasn't prepared to tolerate it anymore, and then I bit back. Before that, I let it go, I let it go, thinking if you let it go, rise above it, don't pay any attention to it, it'll go away. But it didn't go away. What people became was emboldened.
You felt they were coming for you?
Well, I thought they're personalising it and personal agendas. Journalists like John Cross that got themselves into defamation cases left, right and centre. They wrote defamatory articles about someone they never met and wrote untruths for whatever reason because they didn't like me because of their perception of me. So I didn't like that. In the Ange Postecoglou's case, he's opened this can of whoop-ass on himself. He's said things that ultimately the journalist can get in between. If you're going to turn around to a journalist and say, well, mate, I don't think I need to worry about defending because ultimately I've got other things to worry about, why give them that? Because every time you get set pieces, every time you get a set piece goal, zoom, here goes the cameras, vroom, there goes the pen. And you know you're going to get so you've got to be responsible for what you're saying. Yeah. But I do agree. I actually understand his point of view. And to some extent, lesser so, I understand why the journalists are doing it.
Yeah. Reports in Germany, meantime, over the last 24 hours suggest that Tottenham have had contact with representatives
to take his job
of Oliver Glasner, and it comes at a time when Palace are hopeful that Glasner is going to sign a new deal. There is interest from RB Leipzig as well. His current deal expires at the end of next season. Honestly, it's not something that... Does it shock you that? It doesn't shock me. Well, am I surprised? No, not really.
I mean, I could do a sort of keep your filthy paws off my silky drawers from the Grease film, you know, and say, Daniel, what are you doing nicking our manager? But the fact is that Glasner's a good manager. And if there's a vacancy at Tottenham Hotspur because Ange Postecoglou creates one, because he'll create a vacancy, because if Tottenham get booted out of the Europa League and finish 14th in the Premier League, I'm not sure he's going to get a pat on the back. Yeah. He's going to get a kick up the jacksie. Out the door, I suspect. Yeah. And he will have earned that for himself. However he wants to cut and slice and dice it. So with that in mind, Glasner is a top manager, no doubt about it.
Of course.
Palace did well to get him.
But wait, he is, and you're right, he did do well to get him. But where are Palace in all this? Recently you said we're in a cycle where mid-ranking clubs such as Palace are in the ascendancy.
Controlling players.
Maybe they're not.
That context was about player registrations and how you can control the narrative around which players can go to which football clubs. There was also a part of the article which said big football clubs, or supposedly big football clubs, think they didn't have to pay lesser clubs the right price for players. So it was a double-edged argument I was running there. But as far as a manager is concerned, different animal, different set of dynamics, and a different challenge. It's of the same family, I grant you. But in terms of where Palace are with Glasner, look, I'm not wishing it upon them, but it's a commercial reality. Yeah. Tottenham Hotspur is a bigger football club than Crystal Palace, as much as it may irk me.
Right.
But there's a commercial reality to this. I'd like to think that Glasner would stay, but it will strengthen his arm. If Palace want him to stay, then they've got to give him something. I don't just mean more money. I mean, where's the ambition?
Yeah.
If you want me to stay, which I'm prepared to stay because I recognise the fact you gave me the opportunity, are you going to give me a transfer fund that means I can push this team up to the European spots? And by the way, you make this big song and dance about how wonderful Brighton are. While we're having this moment to share. Palace are in a cup semi-final and 3 points behind Brighton with a game in hand. So let's have it right. Let's have it right in cycles.
As you would always say, it's a moment in time. Tonight, Manchester United, will they leave Lyon with a win? Well, we'll see. After the Manchester derby at the weekend, and that was one to forget, goalless, Onana, the goalkeeper, to the written press, predicted that United would progress to the semi-finals as they were, quotes, way better than Lyon. And then that was put to one-time Manchester United midfielder now of Lyon, Nemanja Matic, and this was his reaction to what Onana said.
I don't know, to say that you need to have cover for something like that. Onana, I respect everyone, but to say that, then you need to get the answer. If you are one of the worst goalkeepers in Man United history, you need to take care what you are talking. If David De Gea or Peter Schmeichel or Van der Sar say that, then I will question myself. But if you are one of the statistically the worst goalkeepers in Man United modern history, then he needs to show that before he says. So we will see.
Well, he didn't miss him, did he? Does the truth hurt? I mean, Matic was nothing if not to the point. talkSPORT's chief reporter Alex Crook joins Simon and myself this morning. Simon, as far as Onana is concerned, in Matic's eyes, he's one of the worst that United ever have had in terms of goalkeepers. Does the truth hurt?
I think it probably does in this case. I've got to say, I spoke to Onana after the game on Sunday as well, the Dulwich Dishwater derby, and I'm not convinced that he meant to light this grenade. He's quite an honest and open interviewee. I think he would have probably delivered those comments with a smile on his face, but obviously they come out very different when you see them in print. And Nemanja Matic has bitten and taken the bait, if you like. It does certainly light the blue touch paper. I'm sure the Lyon players and their fans are going to be using this as motivation. But I don't mind it because obviously there's been a lot of debate. Gary Neville suggesting that football maybe has become a bit robotic and a bit personality less. Onana, if nothing else, he's not Manchester United's best goalkeeper, no question about that. But he has got a bit of personality, and I think he certainly added a bit of spiciness to the occasion.
Actually, Simon, Alex, you did speak to Andre Onana. I've met him. I met him actually at one of the fights in Saudi, and he's a lovely guy. Big, warm smile for everybody, as you say. But he was speaking to you on Sunday after the Manchester City game. Let's catch up with this. Here's Onana.
Well, we have to go game by game, but we have to dream big. As a Manchester United, any competition you face, you have to go with the winning mentality. So for us, since the beginning, the objective was already in Bilbao. We know where the final is going to be. So I understand my boss said it's not the main priority, but game by game, we go for it. And I'm sure if we continue playing how we are working, we'll get there.
It's never easy when a manager departs mid-season. You've got a new boss with a completely different philosophy. Are we seeing over the last few games that the players are really starting to understand what he wants from you now?
100%, but changes always take time. And it was difficult for us to understand the system. It took us a lot of time, but I think now we are right and we are improving a lot. So we are in the right direction.
Alex still with us. Alex, Ruben Amorim has argued that they are indeed making progress. Will we really see that if they lift the Europa League trophy?
Yeah, I think so. It's one defeat in their last 9, Manchester United, and as dull as the game was at the weekend, I think they were the better team, and if they'd had someone at the top end of the pitch who was a proper centre forward, then I think the result may well have gone in their favour. I think what you're seeing now is the team really implementing the manager's style. Obviously, it's still a work in progress, but if they can end this dismal season, it has been pitiful in terms of the Premier League, with a trophy and a passport, therefore, to the Champions League, then I think the summer and the immediate future looks a lot brighter. Having said that, it's not going to be easy. I've been doing my preparation on Lyon. They themselves have won 6 of their last 7. They're in the Champions League places in France. Their home record in Europe is very good. So this is a stiff test. And even if they get through this game, it's going to be Bilbao, of course, the host venue for the final, or Rangers in the semi-final, possible Battle of Britain. So there's a lot of hoops to jump through. It was interesting because I spoke to Ruben Amorim. He said, look, the Europa League isn't the be-all and end-all. It really is, because it's the only gloss you can put on this season. And as I say, in terms of recruitment, it makes a massive difference financially and in terms of attracting decent name players if you're going to be playing Champions League football next season.
It has to be the be-all and end-all for Amorim and United. It has to be. There's nothing else.
Well, yeah, if you want to frame it that way. For him, he's taken a job in the middle of the season that he probably didn't want at this time. He wants the job, of course, but he wants to be judged by a set of standards that are based upon an outcome of a team that he's produced.
Yeah.
I would want him to have made it better. Ironically, the Matic observation, which I think is a bit childish and banal from him, because he personalised the conversation that was made about 2 football teams competing with one another. He's probably statistically wrong, because you had the goalkeeper Massimo Talbu, the blind Venetian, that was so bad for Man United, and Mark Bosnich.
So that's right.
Remember?
I remember him. Yeah, I do remember him. At the end of the day, I think Matic was on a bit of a fishing exercise, wasn't he? And maybe misread what Onana was saying, but nonetheless, gone into this, there's a fair amount of spice already ahead of the game, Alex.
Yeah, I think he knows what he's doing. Nemanja Matic, he's trying to whip up the dressing room, he's trying to whip up the crowd. It's going to be quite a hostile environment anyway, and I guess in some ways Onana has fallen into the trap. But he's right, Onana. You know, on paper, even though this is not a brilliant Manchester United team, they should be better than Lyon over 2 legs. You know, you look at Lyon, it's a little bit of a dad's army. We mentioned Nemanja Matic. They've got Alexander Lacazette, 14 goals this season, but clearly not in the first flush of youth. Ainsley Maitland-Niles didn't really cut it in the Premier League. He's going to be starting right back for Lyon. So if Manchester United turn up and they play to the best of their capabilities, and we haven't seen that too often this season, they'll go through over 2 legs. So I make Onana right. And they, as I say, they have to go through to keep their season alive, because if they go out, then you're looking at the first couple of weeks in April and the season is done and dusted. They're going to finish anywhere between 12th and 15th in the Premier League. It is all about Europe. And it does make me smile, because they've had a lot of stick, United, from rival fans over the last few years. Obviously, a lot of fans are enjoying their decline. They've still won trophies in each of the last 2 seasons. They could win a trophy for a 3rd successive season. There's a lot of clubs in the Premier League who would swap places with Manchester United on that front.
Alex, well, we have you. Liverpool, Salah, Virgil van Dijk, reportedly 2-year deals. You've been right in amongst this story. Is this set to be announced soon?
Yeah, I don't think the announcement will be too far away. I guess it's all about timing for Liverpool at the moment. They don't want any distractions to their quest for a Premier League title. They've got 2 very winnable games coming up, at home to West Ham this weekend and away at Leicester on Easter Sunday. Obviously, the Trent Alexander-Arnold situation has been a bit of a sideshow and a bit of a distraction. So I think they've been keen to try and keep these negotiations behind closed doors. But we reported on talkSPORT a couple of weeks ago that conversations with Salah and Van Dijk were set to reach a positive conclusion. And it looks like that is very much the case now. I still think it's a big window for Liverpool, because I think they're going to look to change things around up front. I think they can. They'll sell Darwin Núñez and bring in another striker. Alexander Isak, very much part of their thinking. Hugo Ekitike and João Pedro at Brighton, 2 other names that have been mentioned for me. I think they're going to want another centre-back to come in, and Milos Kerkez, the left-back at Bournemouth, is very much on their radar. So I think we're in for and Simon might not want to hear this, we're in for a really fascinating summer window, because Man City need to rebuild. Arsenal are going to go big. I'm expecting Liverpool to go big. Amorim's going to want to make his own stamp at Manchester United. There'll be changes at Chelsea and Newcastle. This could be a proper summer transfer window.
And the big names continue to join us. Former WBC Cruiserweight champion Tony Bellew is live with us this lunchtime. Tony, good afternoon, mate.
How's it going, champ?
Very good indeed. For those watching on YouTube and your smart TV, you can see Tony for yourselves. He has joined us live. Listen, Steve Collins was saying, yeah, how can you not buy into Eubank Junior Ben? Because the momentum is very much underway now as we go towards the 26th of this month. Where are you at with it? I spoke to you the other day in the BetMGM lineup show. Where are you at with it now in your mind, Tony?
I'm excited, but it's madness. It's crazy. It's taken over the country a little bit, and it's done that because it's crossed over commercially. It's huge. It's absolutely huge because every era and every different type of generation buys into it, Jim, and that's what makes it big. The grandmothers in the bingo walls are talking about it. When he slaps an egg off the side of his head, which I don't like and I think is a bit dangerous and stupid, it takes it to another level commercially. And like I said, it's out of control, if I'm being totally honest. God help it fight week, because I think the whole country's just going to be engulfed in it. I think it'll be on the front page and the back page of every paper. And it's huge. And it's huge because of the legacy and the name that their fathers carried. And now they've actually took it themselves to another personal level. Tony, what's gone on with the whole drama around it all, in my opinion.
Tony, rewind 35 years when their fathers did fight. It was huge. It was on terrestrial TV, and it was a national thing. It was a really big thing. Can this fight be as big as that, or even bigger, do you think?
I think from a commercial standpoint, of course it can, Sven. I mean, I'm not naive and stupid enough. It's never going to get the viewing figures that the fathers got, because in them days it was on ITV or BBC or whatever it was on. It was on, terrestrial TV. But actual people talking about it 100%. I mean, it's huge. It's absolutely massive. You've got 135,000 people spent on a waiting list for a stadium that holds 80,000 people tops, or 75,000 people. There's 135,000 people waiting to snap up any spare tickets, which is just insane. It's lunacy, but I get it. People buy into it. It's basically made it a soap opera. That's what it's been between these two. It's just been one thing after another. And I just hope the fight lives up to all expectation. I think it will. I think they're gonna go in there, and it's gonna be no holds barred. They're gonna literally. I just hope these two don't see each other before the fight comes. I wouldn't like these two to see each other in the street or bump into each other shopping around London or whatever. I think it's that volatile. It could spill over.
Tony, Simon's alongside us, of course. Do you think the closer it gets, Simon, more and more and more people, and maybe yourself, will buy into it?
Oh, I think loads of people buy into it, and I fully understand the reasons why they will. And when everyone's got to choose what they like and what they don't like. I have my reasons for not being particularly engaged in this fight. I've said it consistently. Nothing's changed. I can't be a hypocrite and say, oh, hello, I can have a ticket, can I? I'll come along now after I've trashed this fight for the last 2 years. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to miss out on a spectacular evening of British boxing in terms of the atmosphere, the environment. I've seen British boxing. I've been to great big fights. I know what they look like. This will have a different dynamic about it. I like to see the best versus the best. I don't think they're the best in their classes. I don't think they're the best versions of their family themselves. And I think they're very fortunate boys to be getting paid a lot of money. I don't begrudge people earning money. I'm not suggesting that.
Yeah.
There's so many dynamics about this fight that I don't admire.
Do you agree with that, Tony? That you don't begrudge these guys getting the money they're getting?
No, I agree with what Simon's just said 100%. And listen, neither of these boys are the fathers. But, no fighter in the country's the fathers, if I'm being totally honest. No fighter would beat the fathers in the primes in the country at the moment. I understand what Simon... Simon, deep down, he'd want to be there, but he doesn't want to... He's not going to backtrack, and he shouldn't. He's stuck to his principles regarding this fight, and he's right to. He's got every right to. That's his right to do that. But it doesn't change what the fight is for anyone or everyone. And it's huge, Jim. Listen, I'm the biggest fan of both the fathers. Take away the personality and whatever. I'm of that era that idolised these two fighters, that wanted to be like them. And I understand and get it. Now, I'm friends with Conor. I've known him a long time, just before he got into professional boxing. He's a lovely young man. He's a lovely kid. I'm not the greatest fan of Chris Eubank Jr., but I tell you what, I admire the control the boy has over things. I must admit, I mean, the boy's in such control when it comes to press conference. He's playing it like he's the orchestra, and he's the guy at the front. He's playing them all.
He's conducting
and he's doing exactly what he wants when he wants. But like I said before, this fight is astronomical. It's huge. I genuinely end up thinking it'll be one of the biggest fights to ever take place in this country.
Where does the loser go, Tony, after it?
Oh, well, I think, if I'm being brutally honest, there's only pride to lose for Conor Benn. I mean, for Chris Eubank Jr., he's got everything to lose. If he gets beat or knocked out off a welterweight and he's a middleweight/super middleweight, then he is going to be in a world of trouble. Really is. It really is. But like I said before, it's egos, it's pride at stake, it's family names, and I mean, ultimately, let's all just be brutally honest. This is happening because of the money is astronomical.
Yeah. Are you surprised, Tony, that Eubank Jr. hasn't become a world champion before now?
Which world champion would he beat, Jim?
He's got the point.
Is he world level?
Which world champion would he beat, Jim? He's faced 2 or 3 and he's been spanked on every occasion. And, you know, listen, these two, let's be brutally honest, these two had the opportunity to face for a world title. Conor could have fought Barrios and Eubank Jr. could have fought Lara. And if the clever people around them have just gone to them, listen, hey, hold your jets here. This is ridiculous. Why do you want to go and fight for a world title? And you could get beat, you could lose, get beat up,
right,
really bad,
right.
When you could face each other. And let me tell you, them world titles will still be there after they've faced each other, depending on how they lose, to be honest. I mean, like I said, there's so much more to lose for Eubank Jr. than there is for Conor. And I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that the only reason Eubank Jr. will win is because of size, because it's not. This is a fight, in my opinion, of 2 halves. The first 6 rounds will belong to Conor Benn. He will not be able to keep Conor Benn off for 6 rounds. If he is able to absorb what Conor Benn is able to dish out for 6 rounds, the fight then turns in his favour. Because the second 6, that's when size does come into play. That's when I don't think Chris Eubank Jr. is the best boxer. I actually think he's a better fighter than he is a boxer. Technically, he's not very good. I don't know where he gets off on thinking he's the second coming of Roy Jones Jr. because he's not. And as for Conor, he knows what he is. He goes in and he lets his hands go. And he's reckless and he's wild and he can be explosive and dynamic. All of them things he's going to need in this fight, Chris Eubank Jr. And he's going to need a little bit more as well. He's going to have to be rough, rugged, and he's not going to be able to stop and let up. I think his only chance is winning in the first 6 rounds, if I'm being totally honest. And I think Eubank really comes into play after 6 rounds. I think that's when, if he can wear him down and get rid of him in the back six.
Tony, we're running out of time in the 30 or so seconds. No, not at all. No, we're delighted you've joined us. Joe Joyce and his future. There's been a lot of chat about that. And of course, he loses to Filip Hrgović. Many are saying, from Joe's point of view, let's hope it's time up for him.
People are jumping on the bandwagon that I spoke about 18 months ago, Jim. When he fought Zhilei Zhang for the first time, I cried and whinged to everyone on air, on TV, and interviews that I've done. Joe Joyce's greatest attribute has always been his resilience and his durability. And I told anyone who'd listened, the minute that goes, that boy is an accident waiting to happen. And bear in mind, I like Joe Joyce. I think the world of the lad, but he shouldn't be anywhere near a boxing ring. An interview came out before the fight, and it was taken down from social media immediately because the backlash it got. The interview lasted a couple of minutes, and Joe couldn't string more than a couple of sentences together. Joe Joyce has been a fantastic fighter. He's been a phenomenal amateur. This guy could have been an Olympic gold medal. You know, I think he deserved it, from being totally honest, against Tony Yoka in that final, but he didn't get it. He's been an amazing fighter, but understand that once that durability goes, that's the end of you. Once your greatest asset goes as a fighter, or your greatest attribute, that's you done. And that was, I'm sorry to say, his greatest attribute. He could absorb anything. When he was getting knocked down by the likes of Derek Chisora, folded by Zhilei Zhang, it's got to be over. Promoters should not be putting him on. In my opinion, it's really, really worrying, Jim. I don't want to see a casualty. I don't want to see anything bad happen to that, because and you know what? Here's the saddest part. He's a really bright individual. He's smart. He's got so much ability that other fighters don't actually have. He's got a brain. So I want to see him use it and go on and do something else. I really do. I wish him the very best, and I hope he stays safe. Lovely, lovely man.
I said to you in the summer of last year, Salah and Virgil van Dijk will resign and Trent Alexander-Arnold will go. because it seemed pretty evident to me that was what's going to happen.
I agree, and you did, but nonetheless, was there not still pressure on the club to get the two of them done, tied up and over the line?
Well, there's always pressure in terms of what you're suggesting is the pressure created the outcome. That would make some assumptions that Liverpool had no mind of their own. They would know what they wanted to do, how it was being conducted, and what they might have been wanting to achieve against what the players were wanting to achieve was probably a protracted set of discussions. We all know, despite the ridiculous assertions of the players, that they'd had no contact. And I heard Alex Cook earlier on the breakfast show, saying that they were well aware, that he was well aware as a football correspondent that Salah's representation were being spoken to.
Yeah.
So to suggest that no one had been spoken to was silly. It was a silly game of optics for no one's benefit, and anyone that had half a brain realised that people were talking to one another. It might not mean that there was a firm offer on the table and someone's hand was being put into a position to sign, but it never occurred to me. It never really occurred to me, unless Liverpool are going to be put in an awfully invidious position by the player, which is, I'm prepared to go to a non-competitive league and get £1 million a week, but I want to stay in a competitive league where my football can still be worth something.
Yeah.
But I want to be paid as if I'm playing in a non-competitive league that needs me more than this league does.
Sure. But you've done this on many occasions when you were the owner at Palace, no doubt, negotiating contracts and trying to get some kind of common ground with an agent sitting opposite you. At 32 and 33 respectively, how do you find the balance between commercial sense and value here?
Well, these are unique footballers. There's nuance to this. If you've got a policy that you don't sign players or give them longer-term contracts on huge amounts of money when they get into their 30s, that's because you have a certain outlook. If you've got some exceptional items in your arsenal, in your inventory, which Virgil van Dijk and Mohamed Salah are, then you take these as exceptional items. So that's what Liverpool are doing. Now, whether they wanted to have a one-year contract with an option, or whether they wanted a 2-year contract, or whether the players wanted 3, or whether they found some accord in the fact they've got a 2-year contract with a kicker at the end of it. If they played 25, 30 games, they'd get a 3rd year. Who knows? We'll find out in the rounds. But there was never a thought process in my mind that Liverpool, if they wanted Salah and Virgil van Dijk, which I would assume they did, that they were going to go out the door. And the only way that was going to happen was, and no one at Liverpool, even in their fan base, would want this to happen, was that Liverpool were going to be leveraged into paying the kind of money that the Saudis would pay with the currency that Liverpool have. Right. If Mo Salah wanted to play competitive, meaningful, high-end football, then Liverpool were always going to be in the box seat, because Liverpool can't run the argument that, say, Italian or a German club can take them off his hands and pay more money wage-wise than they can, but they can run the argument that the Saudis can, because the Saudi model is completely different. So if Salah had made them put in that position, it would have been unfair on Liverpool. Yeah. And no Liverpool fan should be advocating for Liverpool to pay £1 million a week to a player that's playing in the best kind of football that he can, against a substandard football. It's just going to pay the dough to build itself an opportunity in the future.
Sure. You're right. Unique players, very special players, that is for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you second guess this for me, Simon? From the first meeting with Salah and Virgil van Dijk's representatives to the last meeting when this has been agreed, how much shift do you think in the process Liverpool have had to perform? Well, do you think they'll have had to move from their original bargaining point?
I have to say, if you don't know what a starting point is, it's very difficult to understand what the end point is and see the shift. But I would imagine they found an accord in somewhere in the middle, because the agents will ask for whatever they think they can get. Liverpool will try to keep the line of being realistic about what they want to pay. And somewhere in the middle, I always do deals, if I can, and the scale of these deals are very different to the scale of deals I would have done at Crystal Palace, but they're all relative, where there's something in it for everybody. If I walk off a table having got everything I want, it's not a deal, it's an autocracy. If they walk off a table having got everything they want and given nothing in the middle, then it becomes a different kind of deal. And sometimes that has to be accepted. And I've had it a few times done to me, where you go, well, I'll give you that to get this. No, well, we'll take that, but we're still not giving you that back.
Right.
And that's why I disliked agents at times, because of the way that they behaved. But it's their job to represent their players, as long as I'm not having to pay them to represent their players.
Other times you actually like agents then?
Not particularly, no. But I can understand what role they occupy. And I also think that, some footballers at certain times in their lives need to be represented. Yeah. Certainly when they're slightly younger, because they don't know the workings of the world. Yeah. And maybe there's a school of thought that says football clubs should start putting vocational training into footballers so they can negotiate their own contracts over a longer game.
Let's look, Simon, at what happens when you drop out the top flight, as, say, Ipswich are going to do. Liam Delap could be available this summer, we hear, for £30 million due to a release clause, understood to be activated if Ipswich are relegated from the Premier League. So is it nigh on impossible to not become a hostage to fortune when you drop?
If you put release clauses in contracts, yeah.
But even without a release clause,
depends upon what your gumption is.
I mean, is Andy Johnson at Palace the exception here?
Well, I don't know.
You kept him.
Yeah, yes, I did, and it was against the run of people's perception. He was in the England squad trying to get into the World Cup for 2006, so he was all part of all the things would be Andrew wanting to leave, and damn straight his bleeding miserable snot gobbling agents wanted to achieve that, but they weren't able to. And yes, I would suggest it's probably a slight outlier. It was also because despite what people may think of me, I had a very good relationship with my players and I was very close to them, very fair to them. Wasn't their dance partner. I wasn't interested in being overly sociable with them because it was an employer-employee relationship. But I was bloody fair and good to them. So when I said to a player, "You're part of the team that got us in this position, so you're going to take your medicine like I am. And if we don't get up the following season, then you can go where you want. You can go to which club you choose, irrespective of the commercials, within reason."
Right.
Other clubs, when I sold Andrew to Everton in the end, wanted to pay more money, but I'd given him my undertaking and I sold him to Bill Kenwright and we got a decent deal out of it. But if you put release clauses in, which are a new phenomenon, which empower agents, because of course agents are going to put release clauses in because they know it's an opportunity to monetize the outcome easier in the same way that they did. There's an argument that says, as much as I loathe how much they get out of it, the agents that got Erling Haaland onto a release clause of 55 million quid for Man City are probably worth to Man City every bit of the 10 or 15 million quid they might have gotten paid for doing that deal, because they nicked a player in today's values. The challenge for me is Ipswich are in a difficult position because they weren't a big club coming out of the Championship, so they've nicked Delap out of Man City, if you can say 20 million quid for an unproven is nicked, but they've got it.
30 million now.
But they picked up for 20 million quid. Now, the thing I would disagree with is why did Ipswich, and Mark Ashton is smart, so I'm not going to criticise his acumen, right? Yeah. But why they would only have a bridge between 20 and 30? He's gone into the Premier League. He was likely to be the mainstay of Ipswich's opportunity, which meant if they stayed up, they might get a chance of keeping him. If they went down and he does what he has done, people want to come and get him. But why only for 30?
Would you? Is this not the benefit of hindsight because of the season that Delap's had? Would you have whacked more than 30 on it?
Well, it's the benefit of the opportunity that might have been presented to them, with the player saying, "Well, I'll come to you. It's not ideal for me. I'll come to you and give it a whirl." Man City going, "Well, we're not in this conversation because we're selling the player to you." But the player saying, "I'll come to you, but if you don't get success, I want to be released."
Right. So did you any time agree to a release clause at Palace?
No, but the release clauses were very different at that time. And release clauses are another mechanism, another lever that the agent fraternity have introduced into contracts in a way to monetize outcomes, predominantly for themselves, but also to give players probably exit strategies that weren't there before. I don't like them, but I understand why they're there.